I got a lot of request questions and clarifications to expound a little bit more on Asian braids. But as I've said, Asia is not a monolith. There's more than 40 countries here. We all have different languages, different political systems, religions, and cultures. And so it's impossible to talk about Asian braids. It has to be country per country. So I'll do Tibet first just because Tibetan braids actually just go hard. it's so it's so badass. So that it's I love looking at them. Whenever I grow my hair long, one of the things that I do is to try and copy one of their braids, but it's so hairstyles, but braid styles, but it's so hard to find somebody that will be able to actually do it. Okay, so Tibetans have been braiding their hair for thousands and thousands of years, not just hundreds of years, but thousands, probably millions of years. It's so prevalent and so common in their culture that it's easy for the younger Tibetans to actually lose trace of the origins of braids. But it is intricately connected to their faith. That's number one. First is their religion, which is Buddhism. Buddhist actually says that the hair is 3,000 threads of trouble, and rightfully so, because it's so their hairstyles, their braid styles are actually attention grabber because it's so different and so pretty that you can't help but to actually remember that it all becomes a part of their identity. And so during the Qing dynasty, 1600s or something like that, when Manchuria was trying to colonize them, one of the not trying, but they colonized uh, um, Tibet. One of the things that they insisted is to have to have Tibetans stop doing their own braiding styles and adapt the Manchurian hairstyle. That involves the front area to be bald, and on the back is a longer hair, and then they braid it. So at first the Tibetans actually resisted. Eventually they couldn't do anything about it anymore. But by the time that dynasty ended, people associated that kind of hairstyle into enslavement by their rulers. So they feel like any Tibetans who would actually wear their hair that way is a slave of that dynasty. So they went on, they continued, they were able to renew their practice. They continued, they resumed growing their hair. So one of the things that they believe in is that the hair should never be cut, and that is regardless of your gender. Whether you're a female or a man, you should allow your hair to grow long, and then you just wrap it around your head or on top of your head as it grows longer and longer. As headdresses are also an important part of their culture and their faith, eventually they develop different headdresses. It could be a scarf, it could be ornaments, or just a different kind of headdress. But nobody can just wear any kind of headdress. There are certain rites of passage that women specifically, or even men, would have to go through in order to earn the right to actually wear a headdress. One of the most popular rites of passage is called letting down the hair. It is a very sophisticated prenuptial ceremony that basically announces the woman or the girl is now ready to be married. And it usually happens when the girl turns 16 or 17. In the old times, it was actually 13. Now it's 16 or 17. Now this is like this is more than, like, you can probably say that this is like the debut celebration when somebody turns 18, or quinceañera, but this is much more sacred, I guess, because as I've said, it's connected to their faith, it's connected to Buddhism. But it's also very expensive because the number one thing, the woman or the girl that is doing the rites of passage needs to wear everything luxurious and new, so she can't just wear any kind of clothing. And then they need to, of course, invite everybody, the neighbors, the whole village. and the friends, families, everybody needs to be present, and of course that involves food. So that's a lot of expenses. And then in this, the rites of passage itself, they would actually braid the hair of the girl, and so there are braiders at themselves. So the elders who and also the braiders are well respected people in the community. So you can't just be a braider. Okay, you have to earn that for you to be able to do that hairstyle on other people. And so that costs a lot of money to the family of the girl. Now, one interesting thing that happened during the 1800s, when Tibetan's armies actually worked with the British Empire, the British army wanted the Tibetans to actually cut their hair. So at this, even as late as 1800s, Tibetans were still not cutting their hair. So as soon from the time that you were born all the way until you die, that hair will remain uncut. And so, but of course, as you know, in the military, there are certain standards that they all need to follow, and that included braiding, that included cutting the hair. So the head of the military of Britain at that time wrote to the Dalai Lama and said that he asked the military, British military actually asked the Tibetans to cut their hair, and they all said that they can't because this is something holy, this is something sacred, it's a part of who they are. And so he wanted the Dalai Lama to ask their men in the military to cut their hair, because it's just a law, that's just something that they needed to do. So after 6 months, the Dalai Lama actually responded and said something like, because now we're one family, you need to understand that in the Tibetan culture, our politics and our belief are one and the same. So the braiding of the hair is an integral part of who they are, and you just need to respect that. So they did not succeed in having them cut their hair. The other thing is that they cannot allow even a strand of their hair to go missing. So if you have falling hair, I shed like a baboon on chemo. So I have a lot of falling hair and I constantly have to sweep and clean the house. But for them, they can't just, and of course I throw it away. But for them, they don't throw it away. They pick it up and they actually put it somewhere sacred. Their belief is that every strand of their hair actually contains a part of who they are. Like it's a part of them. So if that goes missing, that means that a part of them is missing. And then they also believe that it may also be used for the occult. Like somebody can perform some sort of a ritual and hurt you or kill you or something like that. The logic being, it is a part of who you are. And so if somebody can take a piece of that, then that may be used to hurt you. And so they can't allow for a single strand of their hair to go missing. And then they also believe that it may be used for sick people. So if you ever get some sort of a disease or whatever, then they can actually use the hair strand, perform some ceremony to help you get that. Okay, now 108 braids. So one of the most common thing that you will learn and realize when you meet somebody from Tibet or you go to Tibet is that people try to actually braid their hair in 108 different sections. So it can be a box braid or any kind of braids for as long as there are 108. Because 108 is a significant number for them. It represents the 100 mortal desires of man. And so they're saying that they believe that there are 108 mortal desires that if you're able to conquer, then you will be able to achieve nirvana. I don't know if you've ever had a mala bead, but if you've ever had one, then you will realize that there are 108 beads, and that's because it represents 108 mortal desires. So you're supposed to pray 108 times in order to conquer those 108 mortal desires. But outside of that, there are other significance. It's really an interesting number, to say the least. One is that it is an integer that is divisible by the sum of its digits. So if you add 1, 0, and 8, you get 9. You can actually divide 108 by 9 and get a whole number. I think it's 12 or something like that. Please forgive me if I'm incorrect. Okay, and then the other thing is that It represents God. It's like the Holy Trinity for them, because one is for God, zero is for your wholeness. For it represents man, the wholeness of a man, and eight is for infinity, because eight is a symbol of infinity. And then the other thing is that their Sanskrit alphabet actually has 54 characters, and each character has a female and a male version. And so if you add them, there are 108. So yes, there's only two genders and two sexes in there, just that represents their alphabet. And so there's 54. If you add them together, then that's going to be 108. Okay, now anybody who has 108 braids is sort of a symbol that you are now an enlightened person or trying to be enlightened. So you're trying to get to nirvana is basically the message. If you want to wear your braids into 108 different sections. So again, it's not just any kind of hairstyle for them. It has to be 108 sections. And that would mean that you are now an enlightened person and you're trying to get to nirvana. Now, one interesting thing is that China has actually tried to suppress the braiding culture in Tibet. So when they colonized Tibet, they made it illegal for people to wear the different kinds of braids, because they wanted Tibet to adapt China's tradition and culture, and of course their aesthetic too. But one of the things that they learned and realized fast is that they need for Tibet to earn their own money. And because they can't support Tibet, they can't support Tibet. And so one of the things that one of the sources of income is tourism, because Tibet actually has a very colorful, beautiful, sacred tradition and culture and aesthetics, and so they know that it would attract a lot of travelers to their country. And so they allowed Tibetans to actually practice their tradition, their culture again, because they know it's going to attract a lot of foreigners. And so when you go there, there are braiders, braid women that would actually braid your hair for a fee. So it's now also a tourist attraction in their country. But do understand that even prior to China colonizing Tibet, they were already evolving in their braiding style. So they put like ornaments in their hair, like colorful strings. They would color it, they've developed different kind of headdresses. So it has also, aside from the sacred meaning, it has also become a fashion statement to them. So they would usually match their clothing to the designs and the ornaments that they put in their hair. So when China put a pause on it, and then they renewed, they already have all of this different colorful stuff that they put in their hair and the different braid styles. Okay, so in the course of this video, I've tried to put as many of the different Tibetans braid styles, and I hope that helps. And stand by for the next one.